Welcome to Daily Alchemy, Science of Abundance podcast. I have an amazing guest today, Jordan Poyer, who I'm a huge fan of. My son's a huge fan of. I got a 15-year-old Jordan. I know we didn't talk about that yet, but he's like, "Oh my God," when I mentioned your name. But man, I'm super excited to be connected with you, and we're just gonna go on a journey and figure out why we're all here together.
Man, this sounds amazing. This sounds right up my alley, bro. This is a
Yeah.
conversation that needs to be had.
Awesome, awesome. So first off, thank you for connecting. I troll my scrolling every now and then of who's liking stuff, and you popped up like as priority, and I'm like, oh, is this who I think it is? And so then I click down, and then I did a little research on it, and I'm like, okay, he's been on the journey. He's gone through the trauma, and he definitely has come through as a new man, and is showing up and how you show up on the field. I'm sure how you show up in your family, how you show up in your spirits. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I can also tell you a little bit about me, but let's just rock it. Tell me like where you are in your point of transformation and how you've integrated spirituality into you. We can start
Right.
anywhere.
I'm a recovering alcoholic. I was drinking for the most part of my life,
Yeah,
part of my life. And this actually, the March 13th will be my 4-year sobriety date for alcohol. And
congrats.
it really started when I chose to be turned sober. I guess you could say it started when I was younger. I would go to church and I would wonder, like, why am I here? Like, were just preaching the Bible, preaching how to be a good person. Essentially, I always just had like more questions. I just felt something that was always deeper. I didn't know what it was. And I remember from the day I was born, like I just looking at the stars. It was just something that I could be upset at something, or it's my kind of getaway. I could go outside and look at the stars. I never knew why. It was just
Yeah.
something that I know now, but in my soul, I understand that, and there's so much more. And like, when I looked at the stars, I just always fascinated what else could be out there. This can't be it. And so I just always, that subconsciously sticks with me throughout my journey. And because it leads up to when I became sober, I thought my life was going to change more of a sense of I was going to become happier. Everything in my life was going to turn around. And so I was probably a year sober from alcohol. I made a post about my sobriety and trying to help others in their own sobriety. It was my way. I always felt like my purpose is to help others. That's really been what I felt like I've been most connected to, is helping others and paving a way for others to see me. And I've played a sport that I love my whole life. And,
Yeah.
I've came to this point to where I have a voice. And most of my life, my purpose felt like it was football. And going through all that with alcohol and sobriety, I'm like, yo, this can't just be my purpose. And when football's done, then what? And so it was just, I'm in the middle of just going back and forth with myself for probably about 3 years
Yeah.
after my sobriety. I was very unhappy just with myself. I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful daughter, beautiful home, bro. You would think a 20, 28, 29-year-old kid, like who looks like he has everything in the world, like he'd be happy. And like deep down, I knew I wasn't. And I knew I had a lot of questions about myself and who I was and why I'm 3 years sober and I'm still not happy with who I am. And I still don't even know who I am. And so I continue to ask more questions, and really it's turned around during, I would say probably around when George Floyd died.
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into a lot of that, but I started to see things, like it was like my eyes started to open up to different like things that is actually happening. And I started to really, I guess you could say, go down rabbit holes of just different things. And the deeper I went, it was like, I just felt like my whole life I knew this information, but I had never been told this information. I had never been
Yeah.
like, this information has always been there, but it's not something that we're obviously shown when we're younger, because there's 100 different reasons. And that's when I started my like rabbit hole journey, as far as you can call it, whatever, the conspiracy journey. That's all of that stuff. I'm like, yo, like the world is not what it seems to be. And that kind of had me caught in a different kind of loop, because now I'm questioning everything else around me, but I still don't even know who I am. And that's where I was still struggling with that balance of, okay, like you still see the world and you're being lied to about almost everything in this world, but you still don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And going into last off season, I was struck not this year, but the year before, I dealing with a bunch of injuries, man. And it was probably the hardest year I had ever had to go through in my 11-year NFL career, was my 10th season. and just dealing with the injuries and dealing with, again, not my career. At that point, I thought my career could be over this off season. And so like dealing with the headspace of, hey, you're going to have to retire soon. And so I knew like my mind wasn't clean, bro. Like it wasn't out. I'd see all these videos, stuff like you would post and I'd see the energy, I'd see it, but I had never felt it. So I went to explore some more. Bro, Aaron Rodgers talked about ayahuasca, and ayahuasca it was like when you buy a new car and you all of a sudden you see that car everywhere on the street. It was like the heard, first
Yeah.
time I heard the word, it was like everywhere I went on podcasts and interviews, like that word kept popping up.
Showing up. Yeah.
So I dove into that and I went and sat with medicine, bro. And we can get into that later, but that really put a stamp on everything that I had thought I knew, but really propelled me into just a new way of thinking, a new way of being, and I always tell people like ayahuasca isn't for everybody, but
No.
it was for me, right? It helped me understand who I was and not be afraid of that, not be afraid to speak my truth and to speak what I believe and to be me. Because now through meditation practices, bro, I play sound bowls, bro. Like I got a handpan over here. I got a bowl back there. I like to stay in tune, bro. I like to stay in that high state of consciousness. And that's a whole nother journey in itself, dog. Like that. And I can sit here and talk for days about myself. You know what I mean? Like I can sit here and go on about it because it's deep and it means something and it should mean something because like I put the work in, bro. Like I put the work in to have this understanding. You call it whatever you want to call it. Yeah, maybe I used a crutch, but I needed that crutch to help propel myself to understand more. It was like I didn't feel the energy. I couldn't feel the energy. And under the medicine, I felt connected. I felt we're all one. I felt,
Yep. There you go.
love. I felt the bliss. I felt everything and then some. And so that's when I knew it was real. I knew that there is this, it is deeper beyond the veil. Like there's something deeper happening here on this planet, in this universe, in this time right now that we're living in. And it took me to a whole new world, man. And it gave me beautiful opportunities like this to talk to beautiful people like yourself and have these conversations because these conversations need to be had.
Yep.
Where's our state of mind? Where's our state of consciousness? Especially, I think you can only help in athletes because
100%.
a lot of time athletes, like, yeah, we have team psychologists, but it's all, I don't want to say baseline level of learning, okay, about what the right side of the brain does, what the left side of the brain does, but there's something deeper to that. And that's what we need to be made more aware of. And that's essentially, we're light workers. That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Bro, I love it. I love it. Let me ask you a question. Are we open? I can go anywhere?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So what was your relationship like with your parents?
So I never met my real dad before, which was a huge intention of mine going into ayahuasca, was really understanding that part of my anger towards that situation. Him and my mom split up when I was born, and my mom remarried my dad, he's technically my stepdad, but I call him dad, who's Polynesian, he's Samoan. And
Okay.
so he raised me, him and my mom raised me, and they had my brother. He's 28, he's 3 years younger than me. And so a weird child, like and even in a sense with that, I didn't know, like I always knew, but like my dad never told me about my real dad until I was probably like 12 or 13.
Oh,
And
word? Okay.
it was because he wanted, both my parents wanted me to get to an age where I understood what happened and whatnot. And I get that. And I've seen pictures of my real dad before and I look just like him. It's crazy, but I've never met him. He's had his issues in his life. And eventually, yeah, absolutely. I would love to cross paths with him sometime and put our differences aside. Because for the longest time, I did have a lot of anger, a lot of hatred toward him just because he tried to come in my life and then he backed down. He tried to come back in, he backed out. And it just, especially after I had a daughter, I was like, man, how could you ever I had just a lot of resentment towards him. That was some of the stuff I sat with in Costa Rica to deal with. But they raised me well, though. Both my parents were juvenile delinquent counselors. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, man, I didn't get away with a whole lot of stuff. I was three sport athlete. They raised me. My
Yeah.
dad in that Polynesian culture is very strict and very like, get your stuff done, your chores and do your workouts. We had a hill out back. Like anytime we got in trouble, like he had a sled, he had a tire hooked to a sled. And every time we got in trouble, right, we had to pull that damn tire up the hill.
Oh,
He's like
word?
very disciplined, man.
Yeah.
My mom, Since then they split up. They've had their differences, but I commend them because they raised two young men really well. And my mom and my brother are actually coming with me. I'm going to another ayahuasca retreat in 3 weeks in
Nice.
Costa Rica. So my
Okay.
mom and my brother are coming with me this time. So it'll be
Are you going to do it with your mom? That's amazing.
mom's coming. Yeah, my
Has
mom.
she ever done it before?
She's never done it, and
As your brother?
my brother's never done it
Okay.
either.
All
Yeah,
right. All right. I see you doing the work. I like it.
it's gonna be a
That'll
cool
be
experience.
And they, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I did my first ayahuasca. So I'll tell you, you don't know much about me. I'll tell you a little bit about me.
No, well,
I was, I say my journey started when I was 8 years old. I had a bunch of people in my family die. And I grew up in the church like yourself, Dallas, Texas. And my grandfather's name was on the church and the whole deal. And when all these people died, I had this thing where there is no time and they're still with us. So I would say that to my grandmother and she's like, "You're nuts." It's and at the time I was drawing all these weird hieroglyphs and Egyptian symbols that I went since I've gone to Egypt and I've seen the same things from when I was a kid and I still have the stuff. So I'm like, okay, there was something there that was coming through. I didn't know what it was. And so she thought I was a little weird. And at the time, my parents weren't well off. So I got sent out to California to go stay at my other grandmother's house because my other grandmother was like, hey, this isn't a thing. So when I went out there during the summer times, I had an older cousin whose father had taken his life. And he took out his trauma on me in a very specific way. And there was a lot of sexual abuse that ended up happening from there. But 9 and 14, this was something that took place within me. And then I had to sit with that. And it shattered my identity of self. And so then at which point it's like, how do I become somebody? So I had worked really hard, I was a two sport athlete, football and track and field, got a scholarship, got a 1590 on my SAT, really smart guy, right? I was just like doing all the things, but I didn't love myself. And then my family started to break and parents were on the verge of divorce and all this kind of crazy stuff was happening. And then went off to college. And because I saw how poor my family was, I got married like my first year out in college. I'm like, let me just find a family. And so I did that thing. That didn't work out. Ended up graduating, got married again because this married to somebody who had two kids. And I saw those kids as a version of myself. And so I'm like, oh, I could take care of them. And then that became a thing. And then it turned into, okay, I'm not happy here and I'm still seeking outside of myself. Ended up trying to take my life 4 times, slit my wrist, ended up putting a gun to my head, pulling the trigger, took Ambien, didn't throw it up, hung myself. So it was like, did all this and still didn't die, which is great because I'm here now. Deep depression, got put in insane asylums and the whole whatnot. And then I ended up starting a business with a godfather of mine, and he ended up embezzling some money, and I ended up being federally incarcerated for the things that he did. It was one of those deals where I spent 3 years in federal prison between 30 and 33 years old. And in there, it was like a really amazing experience for me. Once again, not in the spiritual. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to read the Bible when I'm in here. I'm going to figure something out that makes me feel safe. And so in there, you end up, how you going to make it? It's 160 dudes. It was a prison camp. So it wasn't like hard knocks, but it was still tough. I had just had a son that had been born, wasn't seeing him, a lot of stuff going on at home, financial situations blowing up, ended up getting divorced while I was in there and looked up one day and I'm like, I got to make the best of this. So I just started looking at the present moment and made prison my family and started to learn how to live out of a locker and cook weird meals out of a microwave, work out and change my life a little bit. And got out, ended up doing the marriage thing again because I was like, that's just what I need to be doing. And that didn't work because through all that time, I didn't love myself. And I was on the path to loving myself. I didn't love myself. So everything that I was, the world will only love you to the capacity that you love yourself. And then they give you as much as they can give you, but it was still all of this broken system. So about 5 years ago, I ended up just taking a whole different tack in life, moved up to New York. And at this moment, I had gone from doing this medical staffing thing to digital marketing, got really good at it. And I actually learned it in prison, which was interesting. Yeah. I was just reading books and I got out. And then my first job was selling cars. And I'm like, oh, I can actually take this digital marketing because you couldn't really get a job coming out of prison. It was like sell cars and work at a gym or like drive a truck. So I went and sold cars and then I figured out how to do this internet marketing better than anybody else there. And then it was called internet marketing at the time, but more Google AdWords and whatnot, and started selling like 100 cars a month. So I'm selling 100 cars a month, $1,000 a car, making decent money. And this is coming in out of the halfway house. And then I started getting recruited into the digital marketing landscape, started my own agency. And then when I did that, I moved up to New York and ended up meeting who's now my fiance.
Wow.
And she's amazing. And she opened my mind up to meditation. Her ex-boyfriend texted her one day a Sadhguru video. And I'm like, oh, what's this? And I watched this and I'm like, oh, this is dope. But it really didn't resonate. It was close, but it didn't resonate. Then I went on this rabbit hole and I got into Joe Dispenza work. And then Joe Dispenza really cracked my mind open because my way my mind worked at the time was very scientific. I'm like, let me get the linear to the linear and understand how A plus B equals C. And I could make sense of that. So I got into the meditations. Things started changing in my life. Abundance started to just go bananas. I started to heal. I had a thyroid condition. I healed that. I didn't heal it. We healed it, right? Because it wasn't a me thing. It was just me surrendering. I had a broken back from triple jumping in college and I could actually start walking again because I would walk with a limp. I could show you a picture of me 5 years ago. I was super thin, couldn't grow a beard. This happened. I grew about an inch taller to about 6'2". Which- And this was at 39.
6'2" right now?
I'm 6'2" now. Yeah. 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 And this was at 39 years old. Got up to 210 and I got muscles, six pack. I can dunk a basketball now. I was like, let me go shout for the league. No, I'm not going to do that. but, but yeah. And that's what really started to open things up. And I would say over the last 5 years, my journey's been crazy. It was remember, like you mimic what everybody teaches you. And then you start telling everybody what's wrong with them. So I went down that phase, right? Then it was like, oh, I need to get into plant medicine. So I did an ayahuasca retreat and then blew up my relationship with my fiance. And that's since healed amazingly. But we weren't engaged at the time, but I went down that path. Then in that year, I did some plant medicine every month. It was this, got to iboga, did 5-MeO, did mushrooms out the ass. I'm like, let me figure out how far I can beat this rabbit hole to go. I'm at a meditation retreat. I don't know how I got anything done. I was just like, I was at a meditation retreat once a month but it was cool because I was able to figure out something about myself. And where it all broke was I went to the Hoffman process, which have you heard of this before? The Hoffman process. Yeah.
I may have.
So the Hoffman process, they had 7 days, no phones, no nothing. And you go in with a group of 30 or 40 people and you guys basically identify all your negative self-love patterns you get from your parents. So that was the thing that really broke it open for me because I'm writing down, there's 500 self-love patterns that they potentially have. And there's stuff on there. Did your parents leave porn on the coffee table? I'm like, my parents my dad left the porn, porn on the coffee table. Like that shit's in here. Right. And so I found 296 negative self-love patterns I picked up from my parents. I only developed one myself. So you could see that there's an origin of why you show up the way you show up. Then you take it and you like beat the shit out of it with the bat. So you get it out of it with your body and you hold the trauma in different areas from your emotions to your spirit to your body. So you hold it in these different vessels and then you have to get it out. So your intellect, you get it out from your spirit, you get it out from your emotional child, you get it out from all these different areas. And once I did that, it created such an awareness of my trauma that I was like, I actually know it's not me and I can now forgive it. And once I could forgive it, I could transmute it. And once I could do that, anytime I tried to go back to that bad behavior or that unloving behavior that was tied to my parents, my world would crumble. So then it puts you in a state to where you walk in integrity. And once I started walking in integrity and I understood how to balance masculine and feminine energy, it was like all of this information and knowledge just started to come into me. And that's what comes out on the videos. Like I just go and this stuff just flows out. And it's no longer an I thing. It's not a Sean Clayton is doing something. It is a we thing. And as long as I touch one, I touch all. And when we go through that stage and I just put a lot of what I make every day into this and into writing books and creating content, not for my self pleasure to get big. It's just more, if I can help 10 people and they learn how to love themselves, we change the world. So that's really my story of where it is. And now I'm just on this journey of figuring out this avatar that is me, that is a African-American male who's 44 years old. How can I reach out, touch individuals, help them? And then we start this ascension process because what I recognize is that we're all walking into this new door. We're all this new Messiah that's coming. And it's not this Jesus Messiah save the world. It's an intersection of it all coming together. And there's information that sits inside of this that once we unlock it, and all the keys are there, like all the things that we ever need is already there. But once we unlock it, we literally start to shift the world and the thing we will evolve to something that we can't even imagine.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
It's true. Damn, that was really cool, bro. I really appreciate you sharing that. So, damn, I have so many questions. You say you went and sat with all the medicines, and then you went to that, what you call the Hoffman's retreat,
The Hoffman process. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hoffman process.
Yeah.
So obviously you have been through a lot in your past and had to, I mean, that you able to come out of that and be where you're at right now. Like, salute you, brother. Let's keep going, dog. That's awesome, bro. That is so cool. It's cool to like touch base. And obviously you've been on this spiritual path and have, I can just tell, a lot more intellects in this space than myself. And I want to get there. And at the same time, I want to understand, when you went and sat with the medicine, did it take the Hoffman process to get you over that? What were your experiences like with the medicine, dealing with some of the trauma that you had dealt with in your past? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
You say you went and sit with peyote and ayahuasca. So ayahuasca brought up some of that traumatic instances that happened in your family. Because when I took ayahuasca, I wouldn't say I never had anything close to what I just heard you talk about, but in a sense for me, I felt like I went through hell and back, right? When
Yeah.
I was on the end. And then you're right, like learning how to love myself was one of the biggest things that I came out of my retreat. And I've only done one, dude. I had never done a meditation retreat. I've never done, like, it was just this one ayahuasca retreat that I went on.
Yeah.
And obviously I have my season. I would go on one every month too. If I could, bro, like I really would. I would go on one every single month because it helps me. And going into my second experience, I have my own thoughts and anxious about how much more can I learn? And is it something that I need to keep doing down the line? And I know that's a broad question, but I wanted to just get what your experiences was, maybe
Yeah.
through the same time, even with some of the traumatic stuff that you had to deal with.
Yeah. So when I walked to it was the first plant medicine I ever did before mushrooms, before anything. And when I did it, it expanded my ego so much that it caused it to break. When I walked out of it, it was like, I knew it all. I'm like, I showed you the notes that I wrote afterward. It was not we are God. It was like, I am God. Here's this. It's nuts. And,
Mm.
like, and I walked out, you couldn't tell me shit. But I could see the interconnectedness of it all, the unity of it all. But it was like everything that I see, I perceive, everything that I see, I create. And it was a lot of I. And it took me down this path of where when I would walk through life, the next 7, 8 months of my life, I became the biggest asshole in the spiritual space. I was just like spiritual bypassing vampire 101 dickhead. And it pushed me to lose the love of my life. And the ending of really the plant medicine journey ended at iboga. So I did iboga, which is the African root, which they give to heroin addict to break addiction. So it broke the addiction to myself because I was paralyzed on the ground for 36 hours, threw up all this black shit. And I had to work through all my trauma. And what I saw in the trauma was that I was not honoring the feminine energy within me and the feminine energy outside of me. I didn't know what that meant. I just meant, oh, I need to get back with my girl. But I didn't understand really how to love myself. And it still didn't get me there until I got through the Hoffman process. Cause even when my girl and I broke up and I was like begged her to get back together after that experience, cause I thought that was the sign. She's like, you just need to love yourself. You need to love yourself. And she would tell me that over and over again. And so what I recognize is that where I wrote out this thing called nowism, where nowism, it's not a religion, but it's more so there's a practice and accountability and ceremony. And if you look at what Christ did, if we take Christ, even if you take Buddha, Christ had a practice. He had accountability with the disciples and he went into ceremony. If you read the immortality key, he was doing something. That wine was not wine. That wine was, let me open my aperture to something that I couldn't see. And then at which point can I bring what I can now see into reality, into practice, and then start walking in that. And that's what you did on ayahuasca. Like you opened your aperture and you walked in as a new man. You healed your body. You're able to perform at a different level. And then we can get into three-dimensional stuff, all pro, first team, everything along those lines. Like you crushed it. And usually at later in age, it doesn't happen that way. And you're able to do that and you're able to do it over and over again and continually what I call become unborn. And now I don't really feel like I have to take anything anymore. But if I do, I know that there's a veil that I'm seeing and sensing and I see to get through it. And so I'll play around I have a little 5-MeO like toad pen, right? I would hit that once a quarter and it'd break me through the veil and I'd see something else, right? That type of deal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bro. That's cool. Work. I could sit here and ask you questions all night, if for real.
I'm
And I don't even know where to go, bro. It's so because it is so deep, and you're right. Like I had that experience, like coming out, I felt like I knew everything. And initially, they always say they talk about integration, and like the day after my retreat, I was like, yo, I'm ready to go home. Like I'm good. And they were like, yo, you should stay a couple days, come down. I was like, nah, I'm ready to go home.
yeah.
And I came home and yeah, I was a new person, but like I had all this new information and I just felt, and part of me does still feel like I do sometimes. Like I have to at least be a light and like through how I work, but also help people nudge them to the signs like, yo, that's not what it seems to be. Like give me
Yeah.
some some stuff on TV at work or whatever, and then me talk about XYZ, and you just be like, come on, bro. You're not really just gonna sit here and pay attention and believe it, right?
Yes.
It's just like our lack of and to me, and what I'm going to what I'm doing is I'm taking 4 athletes with me to Costa Rica in a couple weeks, and
Nice.
we're gonna present. We're making a documentary about the medicine. And again, I'm not telling people like ayahuasca or like plant medicine is the way to go. I just think like our lack of awareness around psychedelics and
Mhm.
around like there's just a negative connotation in Western society about plant medicine. And 5 years ago, you're right. Like I was one of those people said anything about psychedelics. I'm like, bro, like you're crazy. Like I've never ever tapped into that space. But again, like it almost seems like it takes people to having to go through hell and really question themselves to like, because it's a choice, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
choice to have to and to want to see beyond what there is instead of wanting to just be stuck where you're at. Like it's the choice that you have to make to be like, okay, like it's the red pill, blue pill. Take which pill you want to go back to low air and you want to see what's actually real. That's what it is. In order, and it's not. I don't know, bro.
Yeah.
And I've had to calm down from trying to help people become aware because, again, like you said, like we're all intertwined and going to the same divine being. Like there's one, like really, God doesn't have a religion. Like it's not. That's why I always question religion. Was like, yo, why? If I believe that, if I'm growing up in America where I'm growing up, and I believe in this, and I'm taught this way, but a Chinese kid is growing up the same way on the other side of the world but he's taught this, like we're going to heaven and they're not. That's what you're telling me. And a lot of that argument right there, it just like contradicts
Yeah.
itself. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So we're all speaking the same language and
100%.
it's all the same language, but just different ways of getting there. But again, there is a lot of like under the layers of dimensional beings, what's actually happening, the real story behind Jesus and the disciples and shit. We could go to the damn 13 months of the year. Like, right. We could go as deep as we want
Oh, yeah.
to. And so it really just, all of that really just opened my mind to just live my truth and to not get caught in the matrix. Don't get upset at things you can't control type things. Just live your truth. It's yin and yang. It's positive and negative. Every thought, every decision, which way are you going to go? Are you going to go right? Are you going to go left?
Yeah.
And if you're going left when your intuition is telling you to go, you're going against your higher self. You're going against the divine that's trying to help guide you through this realm and through this life. So
1,000%, bro. 1,000%.
bro.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Do you still feel like you still hold on to any trauma at all? Or do you feel like you're able to move through it?
And it was interesting because I do feel like I'm able to move through it because I can just see it differently now. But in a sense, like when I left Costa Rica and I came back here, I came back home and I was here for another 3, 4 months before I went to training camp. I was in that state of being like, I would meditate for probably an hour a day all the way up until training camp. And I was in this state of mind, this high state of mind for a long time, even after the retreat. And it really wasn't until I got it almost like I say it was almost like I got put back into the matrix when I got to training camp and it was like football season again. And now I have all these responsibilities, which is good. I love responsibility, but at the same time, it's like winning and losing. Does it really matter or does it in the grand scheme of things? It really doesn't, right? Because it doesn't. So like I'm trying to balance this out Cause I have this whole new perspective, right? This coach is mad at something, and I'm just like, all right, we good, coach, like, and I'm not taking nothing personal, like
Yeah.
nothing is hitting. Whereas before, like I would take if I did something wrong, right, and I would take that personal. My ego would be like inside, be like burning, man. This mother f this motherfucker. You don't
Yeah.
know, you play the game before, and like that, I've been able to get rid of, but it was like when I got put back in the matrix of football, it was like I could sense myself start to, I don't want to say live at lower vibration, but like slip a little bit. And like I had to put more intention into meditating because my days were way longer. I'm working from 6 to 7 p.m., come home, wife and daughter. Like it was just a different life that I had to actually consciously make an effort and an even more effort than in the off season to be at that level. And it took me some time. I don't know if you know who Derek Gray is, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I connected with him probably 2 months after my ayahuasca retreat. And I had been talking with him for a long time, just about mindset and just how to just think better, how to move better. So I was talking with him a lot early on in the season, just let's have the same conversation like DG, bro. Like we lost the first game, and yeah, I'm upset, but I'm not care. But it's like it's not. There's kids and there's stuff happening in the world. It's like a lot more important than a W or a L. So even to now, yeah, we lost to the Chiefs a couple weeks ago, and like people want me to be sad and depressed about it for the rest of my life because we lost to the Chiefs. It's like, yo, I'm healthy. You breathing. My blood is flowing. I just finished my 11th season. I'm blessed.
No,
Like
100%. Yeah.
that's just how I feel, and I can't call that selfish to me because I've worked this hard to get to this point of my life to have this, have to be able to do this and say that. So I had to change that. It took a while, bro, but I had to like probably week 5 or 6. I caught that balance of okay, like we're in this, and like it's okay to play the human game sometimes. Like I get caught up thinking like I always got to be like I always got to play the higher conscious and the higher awareness game. Like part of me is, man, I'm a different person when I go out on the field. So be a different person when you go out on the field. Be an animal. Like be like I had to accept that, and
Yeah.
that's just like how I played the game. Like how I got ready for the game. Like before accepting that, it was like, bro, like you're not an animal, bro. Like you don't got to be like it's just like just go be you. But like same time, like it's a game that I love to play that I appreciate. And so go enjoy it. Like go be an animal, bro. Like you be whatever you want to be. You want to be fucking. I'm sorry about curse on you.
No, no, get after it, man.
You want to be a damn monkey? You go out there be it don't matter. Just go play football, bro. Go be
Yeah.
whatever it is you want to be. Go play football
Yeah.
and live with the results and just flow. Talk about flow state. Just go play. Let it happen. Just go create. So it's still, like I said, there's the universe kept throwing challenges at me last year. It's still throwing challenges at me right now. And I see it for a challenge and for what it is, and I accept it and I just flow with it, man. And it is what it is, and ain't what it ain't.
You want me to, I'd love to offer, based on what you said, a couple things, a perspective on, because as you do one thing, you do all things, right? And the as above, so below, all the principles and the
Yeah.
hermetics and everything like that.
Yeah.
And because I had a similar thing in like my company. So in my company, I always used to use a lot of, I did this, and it was a very much so, does it really matter like how well the company does when at the grand scheme of things or all this other stuff? And what I started to recognize is that me being the spiritual, and I don't know what the team structure is like, but I always take myself and I put myself as the spiritual lead of any environment, whether it's a client I'm onboarding, whether it's whatever it is. So I walk in as that, and then I take that tip of the spear, and then I intentionally puncture the veil of the 3 dimensions that are there. The cool thing about you is that you can, like what I call spiritual bodybuilding, is like all your life you've built this spiritual body that when you start to then create an intention of all that energy that you built and you throw it into a game, right? That's 2 hours, 3 hours, however long the game lasts, depending on overtime. At that moment in time, you throw all that spiritual energy into that body and it becomes magical. Then you pull it back out again and you do other things. The other context to it is that, are you familiar with the different densities, dimensions, and how those things play around?
As I feel like I am, so I feel like I can have a good conversation about it. But
Yeah.
probably not as
Well,
as you are.
so there's yeah, I call it like playing the game at between the 7th and the 8th dimension.
Mhm.
Okay. So at the 7th dimension is where you actually have an understanding of how to translate from the I to the we, and you know how to use the laws of the universe to move from yourself to everybody. And so if you then start playing the game in the seventh dimension and the eighth dimension, you start playing the game as every version of everybody that's around you. And then you also start playing the game of taking the God energy that's inside of you, and then you pass that on to everybody else that's in a rhythmic state of permanence on your team. For instance, if you were able to, before a game, I don't know if you guys do execute on breath work where the team actually sunk in and then walked out onto the field before every quarter and literally started to engage in that, the entire resonance of the team would come from the spiritual center of self. And then at which point you guys would perform pure magic every single time. And you could even, this would be even crazier to do if is to get the entire stadium to actually knock out that breath work together. So now everybody's literally doing like a box breath.
Wild.
It'd be wild.
That'd be it, but
You would never lose a game. You would never lose a game because the energy and the resonance that would take place in that moment would be insane. Sorry, wait a minute. Something, I think my alarm is about to go off at my house. Something just happened. Anyway,
that's after flow state, right?
Yeah.
Like that's even higher. So flow state is more individual.
yeah.
That's right. What the fifth dimension.
Yeah, that's fifth dimension flow
And
state.
now you're talking about getting into the sixth and seventh dimension
Yeah.
with the breathing technique.
Yeah.
And that is a collective.
Collective
That
we.
is- We.
Yeah. Yeah. So like,
You couldn't necessarily get there by yourself before the game in that state. Yeah.
right. We're playing the game itself. You're going in as you, which is why it's hard when you get into that spiritual space. It's hard for you to say, you know what, I'm going to care about the game so much that I'm going to throw all myself into it, like all of myself into it, because there's so much more than you.
Right.
So there's so much more than you, than the perspective you take as you flip it and you skate. There's this entire we state that I'm going to get into. And in that we state, it's, you know, whether it's, and it doesn't require a lot, but if there, 10 of you, 13 of you, 12 of you, 40 of you, then it starts growing. Everybody's okay. We got to go do this thing. You will never lose a game because I guarantee, unless everybody else starts doing it, then it just becomes a big kumbaya. But more than likely, it would be you guys literally walking into this. And then the next phase is that the rest of the stadium would then start to resonate in that same frequency. And then if you get the sound guy to start actually playing different kind of frequencies within the game, like to the sound bowls and the things that you have, it's not going to be like some shamany thing that's going on. It's just going to be a different pulse, a different rhythm. It's like going to a concert and everybody's moving at once, right? That would be the kind of energy that's being created within this flow state of self that gets translated to the rest of the team.
Man, that'd be, man, I'm writing that one down, bro.
I'm done.
Yeah. There's this. That'd be wild. Because it's funny that you said like the spiritual leader in a sense, because the guys, they started joking around with me, like they call me spiritual leader Poe, because a lot of guys come to me when a lot of stuff happens in the world. They got questions about, yo, we see the aliens at the mall, Poe, like what the hell's going on? And so they'll come to me or whatever it is. So I always do my very best to guide in the right direction and point in the right direction. I'm not telling you this is what the answer is, but I'm also directing you in the direction so that you can find out for yourself and make a choice for yourself. And ultimately it comes down to, like I said, choice. But then part of that also has to come down to you being okay to dive within yourself and deal with some of the stuff that you got to deal with, whether that's through meditation. Because if your mind isn't clear and your heart's not clear, then your chakras are blocked and you're not able to put your energy in the places that you need to and you want to. And so that's stuff that I'm continuing to work on, being able to feel my chakras, and just through meditation, through breath work, and through playing bowls, and even playing my handpan, bro. Like just getting in that flow state and in that creative state of mind. Cause again, like I could tell, like growing up, I didn't use none of my creative side of my mind, because like I didn't play an instrument. I didn't but when I went and sat with ayahuasca, I realized like I love music. And I not only love music, I love playing music. I don't even know how to play music. You know what I mean? But I enjoy it. Even though I don't know how to play, I just sit there and just be creative and play and learn. I play a harmonica every once in a while. I don't know how to play the guitar. My daughter plays the guitar, but yeah, man, the answers have been inside us the whole time. And that's what No, and that's what is mind blowing to me. Like it's been like here
Yeah.
it, the whole time.
Yeah.
And,
And here's what's even crazier is in your situation, like where were your injuries that you had? They were
my elbow, man, my ribs, bro. I had a knee, I had a meniscus and tear arthritis in my knee, and I had a foot. Those were all in, bro. I was getting migraines. Those were all the stuff I was dealing with in the last game of the season against Cincinnati last year.
yeah.
It
All right.
was, and I didn't even want to play the last game of the season. The playoffs, bro, like I was hurting so bad that I didn't even want to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was bad, man. I was in a bad place.
So check this out. Your everything on your left side is your receiver side, right? So this is like your if this starts getting hurt, like and our body is code. There's a book out by Manly P. Hall. I don't have it around here, but it talks about the like the esoteric breakdown of the body. And so if my left side of my body, like my elbows hurt, or this is the joint between my ability to receive and connect with my body, then you got your ribs, which contain your heart, so that you're not receiving things within your heart. If it's like your right side, your knee, this is like your giving side. So then you're on the right side and something was taking place on the right side of your knee. And there's something in your grounding, which is in the lower part of your body that has to do with how you give. So you're not giving from a grounding perspective, right? And
Interesting.
so that has to do with also masculinity and not being masculine. But for instance, the triangle this way, and this is, I'm not doing the Illuminati thing, even though I have videos. But the triangle this way is very much so the construction of masculine energy. And if there's anything that doesn't feel safe within us, what'll happen is the lower part of our body starts to break. So like my father tore both of his patella tendons. He wasn't providing safety for my mother in her feminine way. So what happens is the universe starts to course correct and get you to sit down until those things happen. The reason ayahuasca worked well for you, and like different plant medicines work well for different people, but if I'm overly blissed out, like what I used to be, ayahuasca is just going to make my ego bigger. If, for instance, on your end, you're like, hey, I need to actually start to receive a different aspect of like feminine energy, and things within my world are breaking, like on the lower side, like for an instance, like drinking, the liver is the path to the heart. So therefore, there are things that you weren't in your heart about, but it has to do with how you were receiving the information from the divine, right? And so through that, not to overly complex it, but it's one of those spaces where you actually have the ability because of the ayahuasca to actually help ground you. It actually helped pull that feminine energy together, which kind of gives you this Merkaba thing, right? Which is what that sacred geometry is. It's the combination between this and that. And when it overlaps together, you can actually create anything. And that's the process of generation. Yeah. Yeah. And I even had a shit tattooed on me because I was just like, it means like so much to me to actually understand the intersection of masculine and feminine energy. Cause I got lost in actually overly feminine energy. And then I started to abuse feminine energy, not in an abusive physical way, but just you try to take it and become overly Casanova-y kind of thing out there.
Right.
And once I let that go and I started to honor the femininity within myself, there was no way that I would ever want to defile it outside of me. Really interesting.
That is what was that book that you said? What was that called?
I'll shoot it to you. It's called here. I'm gonna look it up real quick, but it's Manly P. Hall. It has to do with like the architecture. Hold on. P. Hall. That's I think esoteric of the body or something like that. But it really explains esoteric of the man. Yeah, something like that. Oh, here it goes. Occult anatomy of the man. There it is. So it's by Manly P. Hall. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Occult anatomy of man. And it just explains how we're all constructed. And when you have a migraine, what that means so you can understand all of that. And then you can read the code and then it helps you like ground out, oh, this is what I need to do next. It's all out there for us.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like your name has code to it. Yeah. Your name. Yeah. Your name has code. The number has code. 21. Even your number you wear on your jersey.
Number.
21.
My cousin Logan, who went with me to ayahuasca last year, sent me something that blew my mind with the number 21.
Yeah.
And essentially it was about code. Damn, bro. Like, so what do you do with all this information? I know I want to go deep, but that's on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
I 1000% agree with everything, but I don't understand that. So
Yeah.
I know you're writing books and I know you're probably you're teaching the world, but what do you like?
What do you do with
Damn.
it?
Yeah, bro. What
Sure.
is,
So like I always imagine there's a the world, like what the Egyptians left us, these pyramids, is that everybody has a place on the pyramid. We're all blocks that make up this entire really beautiful structure of life. Not everybody is supposed to get all this, right? Which is fine, but we're all part of it. As
Right.
long as when you build that contingent out or that group or that accountability structure out, it's not for everybody to get, but it's for all of us to connect so that we can all move together. You have a gift, right? You're out there in the world. You're using like even the number three is around like being able to embody like physical space differently. Like you, like putting the two and the one together to make a three allows you to be able to do things in space and time that other people can't do. So once you embrace that and you walk in it, it's okay. I know that I can really fuck with this three-dimensional space in a meaningful way. And I can bring in the flow state and the God force energy from the sixth dimension to the five, to the demons of my life, for the four, and be able to land that so that people can see it. So when you go and connect with six and you bring it right back down into three, as long as you have like this flow that's going back and forth, there's that. Where you start to really accelerate is once you path past that into understanding this we state. And then you don't do it with ego because it's not about you. It becomes about we. And then we all just move together. So to your point, what do you do with that information? It's for me, it's you find those individuals like yourself who are a gift to the world. And you say, okay, here's this, go take it. Like if you look at Morpheus and Neo, got them the code, now go, right? Get out the way. It's kind of one of those things.
Like,
And yeah. And so like for me, like how do I show up with it is that, I'll give you an example. Today, of course, I do my daily job and whatnot, and we've got clients and crazy things going on. We had something happen negatively last night with one of our clients, and we were like, okay, this sucks. We're going to have to make some adjustments with the company. I figured out that was had nothing to do with the client. It was tied to this moment in time where I had cut somebody loose from working for me. I didn't give them a full explanation and transparency into why. I had this motorcycle get stolen because of it, because something got taken away from me. So I could connect those two dots because of it. It wasn't like an accident. I'm like, oh, that happened right afterward. Then because I didn't actually clear up the space with that individual and say, hey, here's all the things that happened. And I love you. And I thank you for the work that you've done. I just handled it like CEO-ness. Then all of a sudden other things started to break and didn't work anymore. So I'm like, okay, once I fixed that, literally the same minute I sent that text message to the person, asked if they wanted to talk, but then gave the explanation, the same minute that something else came through the door, 10 times bigger than the other thing that was there. Literally, it was 1223 and 1223 happened like that. Then everything else that was out of balance started re-architecting itself and then shifted and fixed itself literally in a matter of hours. No accidents to that.
right.
One, I can do that for myself, but I can also recognize where that happens with other individuals. The biggest thing, us as people, we have to be willing to receive. That's it. Yeah. So people like you that show up where somebody can be like my son, for instance, looks up to you immensely. He sees you and he's, wow, this guy's on this path. Here's the journey that he's gone on. He understands these different aspects of esoteric principles, spiritual beliefs, understands how to walk that path and literally changed his life. And things are infinitely beautiful. You got to tell that story, right? And keep telling that story like you're doing right here. But in addition to not only telling that story, it's then being bold enough about it in the pockets like these podcasts, but also like out there on the stage to where you're shifting the team and saying, you know what, we're putting together this apparatus that's going to show people how to win the Super Bowl, not only in the game, in the NFL, but in life. And that's your story now. That's what you walk on. And you don't have to figure out how to read the book of creation, which is the Sefer. It's the thing. This is, if I show you, this is the hardest damn reading book I've ever had in my life, but I'm reading it. Yes. And taking notes like crazy. But you don't have to do that. But it's being able to connect with those that are, so that it's, hey, here's the question, you get the answer, and then you go execute on it because you have a different method of facility than I do. And I honor that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then, bro, I feel like I should pay you for some of this information. Not that me. What's next then, bro? What? Because I always like, especially in America right now, like we are, it seems like in deep shit. And like I said, I'm trying to maneuver my way through this life. My daughter, she's 7. Like I'm homeschooling her, so I'm doing everything that I can to keep her out in the sense of I don't agree with a lot of stuff they teach in school. I'm not gonna put my daughter in school. That's not what I'm gonna do. But down the road, what's next for humans? Like what I know Earth is in a transition and the Earth is splitting into two. I always feel like something's gonna be worse. It have to be worse before we essentially wake up
Yeah.
and humans essentially wake up and realize we are all one and we have to do this together. And it almost seems scary to think about, but it was like COVID didn't work. Like some people woke up for COVID, but like most of the world is still even arguing for all that to be pushed, which is crazy to me. And then like, we got the election coming up. We got, and I understand like working on me is like the number one thing that I can do in order to be there for me, one, but for my family too. And but at the same time, like, how do we prepare for whatever's coming? Right.
Yeah.
Like I feel it in my bones that something is coming and
Yeah.
we can meditate all I want. I can just look at property elsewhere, do all I want, but like something is coming and like how are we gonna prepare for that?
So what's coming, how do I put this?
Is that a good question? I
Well,
don't know.
it's a phenomenal question. So what's coming is the world as we know it will never be the same. Okay. We are at the point now where our spiritual bodies are moving through and taking over, which is why like all these like crazy deaths and things and wars and whatnot are like kicking off and you're seeing this transition. It's to remove, it's in order to remove certain souls that are going to hold on to the past because we have to be present in order to ascend. And everybody gets a choice to do that. So we all have a choice to do that. The choice has to come from those of us that have the responsibility to be able to show the world that it's actually culturally cool to actually be present. Okay. So with Gen Z and everybody else, we move in communities, right? I'm not Gen Z, but right? But it's the we, but
Right.
they move in communities, right? And they move in a different rhythm and they move to the cultural beat of life. And as long as we can set that beat, what will happen is that we need to make it so relevant where people like me, like you, like anybody else out there, it's time to be present. What was is not the story. The story is how we show up right now. And I found that there's literally one way to cure all of this. Okay. And when I say it to people at first, they're like, not. And then once you sink into it, and I get chills every time I talk about it. I'm about to time that thinking about talking about it. So when I went on healing my trauma, when this unlocked for me in the Hoffman process, is that I went and I solved my parents' shit. And I'm like, oh, my parents had shit. What was that shit? And I got to go solve for that. And then I went back to slavery and I'm like, oh, I've got this blackness that may be me. And how can I see that as a gift? How can I see the fact that as a black man who was my great grandparents were enslaved? How can I see that as a gift? I wouldn't be athletically me if that hadn't happened, had we not worked on those fields. I would not have the kind of cultural rhythm that I have had those things not happened, right? So us even having the music we have, us even having the physicality that we have is no accident, right? And so that's a gift. So I was like, oh, I solved that trauma. Let me go back further. Then it went back further and back further. And I'm like, okay, now I'm at Adam and Eve looking at that trauma. And I'm like, shit, where did that come from? And then if you go back to the source of God, where God literally, and from first to second dimension, God said, I am, and then questioned who it was so it could have the experience infinitely compounded. That experience was not an accident, but that experience created all the trauma. That experience created the polarity. If I had to, if God itself questioned itself and created all this ripping apart of itself, all good and bad, whatever we want to define it as, then if I go back and I forgive God for that moment and I give God a hug and I love on God in that experience, then what happens is everything comes back to center and then God hugs us back because that's all God ever wanted is when it split itself into the devil and the demons and all these other things that needed to exist for us to actually understand how to love. Could we love that which it gave us? And once we do that one thing, there is no more trauma because those are all the things that created the trauma. And we go back to the source and then we look at everything as wholeness and we embrace every situation in life. And that's when the whole thing just goes away.
Man, that was dope. Right. I might take that one, bro. I ain't gonna lie
Take
to
it. Take it. It ain't mine.
you. That was that
It's
was
it's ours, man. And that is whenever and this really shifted me with when I would get into disagreements with my fiance. I'd be like, I just go back to that original source. God, I forgive you. And I thank you for this experience. And every time I'd forgive God and thank him for that experience, so thank it, because there's no he or she, but thank it for that experience, it just resolved itself. She would just show up differently. It would like the whole story would go away. And I was able to hold that container differently.
wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
That
Man.
flow.
Yeah.
Uh,
So realize this, when we create, we can create the biggest hell on earth or the biggest heaven on earth.
that's what essentially heaven and hell is, right? That's
State of mind. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
mind. And I had that conversation with somebody today. Not it's just heaven. It's basically saying heaven's not a place that when you die, like you go to, you're gonna shake God's hand. Like
Yeah.
state of mind, it's a state of being, it's a state of now. How are you living? How are your thoughts? Or are you living in that state of hell? Are you living in shame, guilt, fear, anger, all those low vibrational beings? And or are you living in this abundance, love, peace, joy?
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, it's a choice. People and again, I have this discussion with my brother all the time. Is we have the choice, but people don't understand that there is a choice.
Yeah.
It's and that's how hard the matrix works, or how hard the devil, whatever you want to call it, works for us to blind us with the material stuff and the materialistic stuff and the just all the negative stuff on the news, the fear-based stuff, and to keep us there.
Yeah.
But it's like they almost feel getting like we almost got to work just fine. And I know it's balance, right? Like good and evil. Like, dude, they're working just as hard as on the evil side as we are on the good side. But it's just like, dang, bro.
Yeah.
See some of these people, especially I go to work and see how lost some people are in their minds, and you just want to help, and you just want to like, man, like you ain't gotta feel that way. Like you ain't gotta live like that. You ain't gotta be that angry. Like it's not. There's a lot more to life than I hear some of the conversation. I overhear some of the conversations. I feel like that's one thing that I've been able to is be present. It's like
Yeah.
past and past. Like it is what it is. It ain't what it ain't. It happened. Cool. Like I'm here right now. Like,
Yep.
you can miss decisions, and I'm doing my very best to every decision, every thought to go this way, to trust my gut, and trust my intuition. And I know if I even think about going this way, like I'm going against my higher self, I'm going against the divine. I'm going against. And it's just but understanding that there is a choice is where it's where I feel like a lot of people have to at least get to understanding that, wow, I don't have to feel like this. No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And it's a choice. It's a choice. And it's what is coming is going to be a reflection of our hearts as a collection. And that will, whatever we get, it's like when people are like, Facebook's the worst thing ever because the algorithm is fucking with me, or Instagram. It's a reflection of you. My algorithm is pretty dope. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's the algorithm of life. The algorithm of life that's showing up for us is going to be a reflection of us. Like my experience in life is very good every single day from what I can see. And I have other people that are like, this was the worst day ever. And I'm like, we're in two different dimensions. The responsibility is for us, like, and this is where I feel like there's going to be a bunch of us that come forward as these light workers that are going to change the cultural relevancy of life in order to show people that it's freaking cool to get in the present moment. It's cool to actually do the practices, hold people accountable, walk in integrity, feel your emotions and actually know what that actually means, and stop labeling everything from somebody else's context, and then start walking through the doors and opening up to plant medicine and psychedelics so we can see stuff that we haven't seen. And then we all ascend together. That's where we're going. And it's going to cause some things to break, and it's going to cause some structures to break. And this is why this election is going to be fucking nuts, because this system has to break for us to find the truth.
Absolutely. And sometimes I feel like even when people see the truth or the truth is presented, like they won't even, it's almost like they'll be in denial. There's a lot of people that will be in denial of it. And those are the souls that essentially are going to stay here on this, when the planet shifts. And it's crazy, man. You go as deep as you want to. And I've gone down some deep, like I said, bro, like when I opened up to this whole new space, and really just opened my mind up. It was like just watching a damn play unfold every day. Just look at this play going. They watch the Super Bowl and it's just people out there just playing with the damn nutcracker. It's just got believe. It's wild, man.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Wild.
Bro, man, I love it, man. I'd love to stay up and connected if you're cool with that. Yeah.
Please,
Yeah.
bro, please. I know as soon as we get off here, I'm gonna have 15 questions come up, then I'm gonna be like, yo, I forgot to ask this. So
Ask.
I can shoot you a question, bro. Like, just please. And I'm down to hop on, bro. For real. Like, this is a space that, because I wanted to start a podcast like this. I actually texted my brother today, and that's partly why I got this brand new camera, because I wanted to start a podcast in a sense to have these type of conversations. I don't want to talk about sports, bro. I don't want to talk about politics or nothing else, bro. Like, I want to talk about like how to elevate our minds, how to become aware, how to live in the present moment. And like you said, make it cool for athletes to like talk about this.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel like it's okay, bro. It's okay. Right? You're good. You know what I mean? It's okay. We're good. We have some stuff you got to deal with. It's okay. I love you. I appreciate you. You know what I mean? Like, we can move on. Like, you don't got to be stuck in that. Like, hey, a lot of athletes are living in that ego, living stuck in the past, living stuck in whatever, but they need a voice. Like, we need A-Rod was a trailblazer for me, and I want to be a trailblazer for others too. He opened up the doors for me to even think about going to sit with this medicine, and now it's changed my life and given me so much perspective on life, that this beautiful life that we have, bro. Like, we literally chose to come down here knowing the experience that we were about to have. And it was like, yo, pick your level. Look, all right, we're level 10, like hard as shit. All right, go down there. We're going to wipe your memory, come back when you're done. Let's see how it goes. Live your life. Enjoy it. You know what I mean? Figure yourself out. So when you feel like, when I figured myself out, like I was able to move how I wanted. I was able to control my emotions, my mind, and move how I want, not how anybody else manipulated me to move or anything like that, man. So
I feel that. I feel that.
I appreciate you, dog.
Oh, man, I love you, man. I definitely feel a brotherhood here. So
I know we met in many other lives before, so we're going to definitely be connected. For sure, man. I appreciate you. I can't wait to connect some more.
All right, we're on it.
Anytime you need me on, bro, for real, it's my off season now. I usually I got time and space, bro. So this is the hit. You want me to hop on again, bro? Let me know.
I'll do it, man. I'll do it. No, I'll definitely call you. You're speaking to my heart. Looking forward to hearing about the journey too.
Thank you for this opportunity, brother.
All right, brother.
Great night, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
Likewise, man. Later.
All right,